Bai sai ai nano I kai mai Bai sai anom kai ai Chim bai nganum anwani Ini sai kayo Amayanu Amaya siayu. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Earth Warrior Rising, Ignite Spirit Within, and embody the new paradigm of self-mastery. I'm your host, Lotus Sky, musical channel and shamanic guide, and I'm so excited to introduce our next session. Such an honor to have this guest here, really the embodiment of the divine feminine, really deeply studied in the sacred path, and I want to introduce Anaiya Sophia. I hope I'm pronouncing your name. Is it Anaiya or is it Anaiya?
Oh, no, I kind of like your way, actually.
I should have probably confirmed that. I was like putting all these fancy things.
I think I might change it. I might change it.
Okay.
Usually it's Anaiya Sophia, but I really love your version.
Okay, I'm in Hawaii, so we pronounce all of the vowels like Anaiya, Ka'aina. Well, okay, Anaiya Sophia, she's a mystic and author, has written many books such as Opening Your Heart with Kundalini Yoga, The Pilgrimage of Love, The Roast Night. I really see her as a transmitter and a channel for Christ consciousness, for the divine feminine, for really, look, what I'm getting is like this priestess path, in a really beautiful way, the temple path. And I'll let her share more, but I'm really excited to have her. I'm really excited about the transmissions that are coming here from you. She's recording all the way from France, and in the evening time, and we're making it flow in this way. So Anaiya, welcome to the series. How are you?
Oh, I'm very, very well. That mystical sound, sonic medicine was absolutely clear as a bell. That is a beautiful offering and gift. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's my honor to share in this way, and I was definitely tapping into your energies and mine together. Could you share with the audience, I know I shared a bit, but your mission in this world, who you are, what you do.
Yes, I'm most definitely most definitely intrigued, devoted to wanting more of an understanding of what Christ is, of what Yeshua is, of what Jesus is, the whole thing, man going through transformational experience and then finalizing as this Christ consciousness. What is that? What is that transformation? What does it mean for us today, my generation, younger? What is the language in that attracts people rather than puts them off? What's the ritual? What's the day-to-day path look like in such a way that captures our creative spirit and our move into the new paradigm? Because what was for 2,000 years ago, and that epoch, what is now, perhaps most definitely requires a new languaging, a new vocabulary, and speaking directly to what we're experiencing. So that's that part. I love Mary Magdalene. I love her most likely embodied understanding of the Christ path, the transformational journey, as a woman, as the feminine, spearheading that more mystical element. I love bodies and what bodies are capable of. I love moving, I love dancing, I love holding, I love caressing. I love trust in one another. I love love in one another. And I'm quite joyful.
I love that so much. And I think this is a very important conversation to have, on many fronts. I was born and raised in the Philippines in a very traditional and conservative Catholic family. And as we know, there were certain perspectives around that relate to the divine, and in many ways is beautiful, but also in many ways it's a little distorted.
Yeah.
And as I continue to develop on my spiritual path, tuning into the new paradigm, tuning into the new earth, tuning into healing and the path that connects to source, to God, goddess, great spirit, whatever way you want to call it. There are a few things that come to mind. The first one is, you know, the idea of Christ consciousness, the
Mm.
idea of divinity in our humanity, divinity in our nature beings. The channeling and awakening of our inner divinity as life. So
Mm.
that compared to um, the uh, dogmatic and sometimes tragedy focused aspect of Christ on the cross, and then
Yes.
the aspect of the divine feminine, um, particularly by the carriers of Christ consciousness like Mary Magdalene. And there are all kinds of perspectives and interpretations of their relationship and who
Mm.
she was and how she was depicted in the Bible, and how she and who she really is, and the different interpretations of that. And so I'd
Mm.
love to unravel that more, because whether or not, to those who are listening, or not you are more shamanic, more in indigenous traditions, or in more in Hindu traditions, or whatever, wherever you are in your spiritual path, I think I love I love these perspectives, because I think they all
Mm.
have a common thread, a universal
Mm.
message, right? And I feel that this would be a really powerful transmission of something that is ancient and sacred, that we can apply to our modern life, to where we're
Yes.
going as a people and as a consciousness. So let's dive into the idea of Christ, of Yeshua, of Jesus, and the life that he lived and what he really represented. What was that to you?
Well, to me, the whole thing is a very feminine essence. I mean, we can even start with being born in a stable. Well, there's a shamanic act right there. And there's this emphasis of like little animals being in there with him, and the straw and the smell of the straw, and bedding down into the hay. He begins, on this shamanic of the earth footstool. And if you look at the whole message and his supposed way of being, profoundly loving, mixing with all of humanity, meeting everybody on the level that they're at, forgiveness, caress. There's a lot of touch in the Christ path. I know in the Jewish tradition, everybody was washing feet. That's a tradition. But there's a real emphasis of, letting that sacred heart wash the feet. There's always little references to God as being a lamb. I just think that's amazing. I love that. There's a lot of joy. There's a lot of dancing. There's, of course, the oils. You hear so much of Mary Magdalene being a myrrh bearer or a myrrhophore, one who carried the myrrh, one who carried the sacred oils. But everybody at that time was working with oils in their healing. In fact, that was the only medicine they could mostly get their hands on quite easily. Different variants of the olive oil, little frankincense, a little myrrh. So all of this is really the texture and the tapestry of a very feminine way of life, a very feminine way of being, very feminine transmission. Look at that first transmission, which I still love wholeheartedly today, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall inherit the earth. These blessings, these beatitudes. So that's a nice little play. You often say beatitudes, but it's like, no, this is an attitude to be. And there's so much unpacking in that, and especially if you're looking through the mystical lens, you're going to find some really juicy, gorgeously comforting, I like that word, comforting messages for this time, especially as we're moving through COVID. And now for us in Europe, there's a war, a very big war brewing and spreading, which on an earth level, of course, is happening, and it's terrifying, and it's dangerous, and it's annihilating, and it's all of that. But on another level, could it be like curveballs, swerving the rising of the sacred feminine? Before COVID, before this war, before all these restrictions, there was a lot of gathering taking place. There was a lot of creativity taking place, and there were brains going off left, right, and center, what this new earth, what this new paradigm is going to look like. And we were on our way. Along comes these curveballs to perhaps, if you look at the restrictions of COVID, everything is very anti-feminine. So it's step back, social distance, wear a mask. In France, no more kissing when you say hello. Be isolated, be alone. So on one level, I am really speaking on one level, that these items on the agenda are curveballs to perhaps rein in that which we were expanding into. But the thing is, we are still expanding into it because we're now doing the work at home. We might not be gathering at the festivals and the meeting places, and we might not be dancing together and being wild together and brainstorming together, but we will. What we have done is we've gone through a dark night. We've been in our little cell, like an anchorite. We've been in our little cocoon. Some of us may have fallen and reverted back to fear and minimizing the life. Others have said, right, let's roll those sleeves up and really take this opportunity to take a nice big deep dive. So there is so much in motion at the moment. And yes, for that first question, I feel the whole of the Christ path is feminine. Obviously, I'm not meaning womanly or female in any way. And I'm even reluctant to say the word feminine. I'd rather say nothing at all. But we could say, if you look at it, it's a very feminine message. It's a heart message.
It's a really beautiful way to put it. I love what you mentioned around, the events and transformation that's happening in the world right now, where there is some level of isolation or period of it, and what it brings upon us. So some people may fall, revert to fear, especially those who are not particularly equipped to navigate, from a higher level what's moving forward. And there's some people who are ignited by the events. I think what I'm noticing, particularly with the people I work with, is that they're ignited to start first within their own lives and walking that path of love, which I feel is really what that Christ consciousness is. It's that unity, it's that sacred heart connection with each
Yeah,
other.
yeah,
And the meeting of divinity and humanity, within each other from all walks of life. I think, that level of almost breaking our hearts, to break it open, things that are heartbreaking that are going on in the world, break it
yes,
open to greater compassion, greater connection, greater love, greater feeling, and being led in that way. And
absolutely.
that's what I noticed in the paradigm that's coming in right now. I think a lot of people have sobered up. I live in the United States. I grew up in the Philippines, and whether you're in the Philippines or United States, there was always that I was very much surrounded by the conquest of more, and the
Mm,
conquest of coming out on top. And
mm,
I, I guess coming from a colonized country, there was just a lot of deprogramming that I had to go through around what it really means to create a successful life, right? And so by delving into spirituality, by seeing the leaders that have walked before me, um, and the teachers, the illuminated ones, like Christ, Mary Magdalene, um, indigenous leaders, indigenous shamans in South America, like all these individuals that are really um, walking the same song as has many translations, uh,
Mm,
is what's awakening within us. And so, particularly when a war started, I really noticed that beckoning of more love to be expressed, you know, and more hope to be had, especially in these times, but also a deep reflection of
mm,
misalignment in our own lives and
mm,
turning back to the alignment.
mm.
Mm,
Yeah, it's brought for me a real, like a gravitas, just a real, very honest aligning, really making sure that nothing is slightly left or nothing is slightly right.
mm,
A deeper seriousness in my prayer,
mm,
um, and a lot of checking, like, how true am I really? Really, really? My behavior, my words, my activities, everything, looking very, very carefully at it all. I've come through the new age, so I've tried a lot of things. It's very glamorous. It's very glamorous, the rituals, the ceremonies, the promises, and of course there's a lot of Christed like teachings and communities in the new age arena. And having to just sort of dust that off, and lots of reconciliation, lots and lots of forgiveness of how I was attracted and how I probably even represented that at a time. And then, another curveball bringing me back to the center and just noticing, oops, oh, I kind of went off there again. Noticing how easy it is to do that,
ooh,
deepening the compassion, deepening the mystical contemplation, the prayer, realizing, my goodness, the path is narrow. This
mm.
concept, the eye of the needle is extremely thin. Uh, you got to be really honest with how you're lining up with that, if you're lining up with that. And,
Mm,
my generation, I'm 52, so I have a sense of the heaviness of the Catholic Church. So not going back there,
mhm,
not going back there with my own, inner compass. How am I doing with the eye of the needle?
mm,
And not picking up the heavy message of the Catholic Church,
mhm, mm.
condemning, punishing, all of that business, but to be sincere in the progress.
I love
So it's
that.
a fine balance. You got New Age on one thing, you got a heavy religious tradition on the other, and you've got the eye of the needle, you've got the narrow path, the vertical axis.
But let's talk
And the
about
two,
I'm really so
yes.
curious around this, right? Because I think I know where you're getting at. Because I think maybe
Hmm.
like I've also experienced that as well. You talk about the new age that you came out the new age, and this is very glamorous. And it sounded like there was an experience there or a way um, it's led and created, or I mean, there's a whole spectrum there as well. But it sounded like there was a way that something you saw there that was also off balance, right? A little to the little on one side. Can you share more about that?
Yes, it was like I'd say things like false light or false love or false trust. So the leaders, the people would be really saying one thing, but you could, number one, you could just feel, hang on, that's not entirely true. And then part two, it's only a matter of time before you actually see them in their activities, in their behavior, being completely not what they say they represent and not what they say they endorse. So that was a little bit heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Coming in, as a fashion designer in London, so coming into this new age community, believing this is it, I found my yummy tribe, and then just noticing, oh, hang on, the same dynamics are happening here. The
Mhm.
gossiping, the backstabbing, the competitive edge that I left from the fashion industry in London. Oh my God, there's a spiritual version. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
still happening here.
And when you say new age, to those who are like, what are you guys talking about, new age? I'm really new in this path. How would you describe
I
it?
guess things like ascension and the violet flame and Reiki and what else was I getting into? Kinesiology. The Kabbalah is not really New Age, but there is a New Age version. So I was more into that. But it was more like ascension, I guess, the ascension path, and calling on certain powers and deities and affirmations, which do bring a power.
Hmm. Hmm.
But maybe it's not a holy power. Maybe it's not a divine power. From
Hmm.
what I understand in the psychic realm, there's many beings hanging out.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
they're not always who they say they are.
Yeah. Yeah. When I,
And there can be a little two-way traffic. Like, I will tell you what you want to hear via the channeled message if you absolutely believe who I say I am. So there's a recycling of energy.
yeah,
Tarot cards, goddess cards. I've got loads. Trust me, I've got loads. But at a certain point, I had to just like put those away.
yeah. I think
'Cause
what I get it. So I don't mean to
yeah,
interrupt you, but I'm excited about this conversation. Uh, I came from that strong Catholic background, and just like you, found a New Age, and I was very interested in like, um, I was very interested in the mystical aspect, the magical aspect of life, and that's what drew me to the
yes,
crystals
yes.
and the oracle cards and the different teachers, ascended masters, whatever you would call them. But then I also noticed, I remember this because I moved to Mount Shasta, which is a vortex, a very
Oh,
spiritual vortex in California. And I just saw a lot of ego, you know?
yeah,
I saw a
yeah.
lot of spiritual intellectualism.
Mm,
And I think more than the tools, it was the relationship to the tools, where I think in the New Age, there was this aspect of us being God beings, but in an egoic sense of ascending to
yes,
the godlike state, which is uh, a distorted form of power that created separation
yes,
from those who had this information and those who didn't, the sheeple
yeah,
sheep, and
yes,
so it was very anti-Christ consciousness, if you think about it, because Christ
yes,
hung with everyone and shared these very universal spiritual values,
yes,
and here comes the New Age, where there was almost like the idea of ascension was where I am is not good enough and there's more to be had. And so it was there were some distinctions that were distorted to what true spirituality really means. So I even had to find myself needing to recalibrate to
yep,
all of these tools. I have, animal totem cards, and um, Ganesha is sitting on my altar, a teacher of lightheartedness to me, and Lakshmi is teaching me about opulence and abundance in a very grounded way. But I also have, like, eagle feathers from my shamanic path, and the way that I relate to this is, I think, really from a place of humility, from a
mm,
place of sincerity, and to understand that ultimately I am, I am the source of this. I am the source. I'm a direct connection to source. You know, and these are all different perspectives, and I come up with my truth through my own interpretation from a place of
mm,
sincerity, from a place of heart and love and humility, and see the strands of that. And
mm,
so and that's it. Interestingly enough, it was when I went into the shamanic path and a medicine path and sat in the jungles in Peru, where I was shown, you know
mm,
Christ consciousness as a very universal message of love, of truth, of
mm,
connection, of releasing judgment, of
mm,
releasing any idea of a pedestal or ranking, and releasing the self glorifying and going into oneness, connection.
Yes.
unity in our diversity.
Yes. I can remember there was a lot of magic, but there wasn't much grace.
Mm,
And
mm,
when I have that grace feeling, to me, that's my little inner compass needle saying, God is present.
yeah.
And the humility, the tears that come when you feel grace.
Mm,
I never got that, not once in the New Age. I felt euphoric, felt ecstatic, felt amazing, felt like a goddess.
yeah.
But when grace comes, I feel humble. I
Mm,
feel childlike. I feel innocent. So it's kind of like, it's not the big energy, but it's more the, when I say lowly, I don't mean small or less than. I
yeah.
just mean I am struck by awe right now because a beautiful divine presence has swept through me, is around me, surrounding me. Who knows? Who knows? But all I know is I'm on my knees. I'm on my knees
Yeah.
praying. And that's what I want. That's my little eye of the needle.
I love that. That eye of the needle. It really is very thin, and
Yeah.
it's that balance. I think a lot of people who do the spiritual work from a place they don't want to feel self-deprecating, like many religious traditions that are taught in this way. That I guess in the definition of lowly is like really less than or unworthy and self-deprecating, right? And
Mm.
almost you know the prayers or the things that they're asking for, the relationship to God or divinity is very much that of supplication, of needing, of desperation, and the pleading that we
Yes.
see and feel. And then there's the other right wing of um like egotistical power of I'm powerful, I'm God, like I'm powerful, I can create my reality, I don't need
Yes.
anything, and it creates that level of separation, and it gets distorted. It's like
Yes.
a false light, and I know
Yes.
people fall. I say this because I've seen this in many of my visions as well, of like when
Yes.
we're navigating, what does it truly mean to be powerful? What does that truly mean to feel our own power without um putting ourselves on a pedestal, getting egoic distortions, and without being self-deprecating? Where's that very thin eye of the needle? And I've
Yeah.
experienced it times, and it's a love from outside, and it's a love from within that meets.
Hmm.
And
Mm.
when I feel that way, and when I'm shown that power, I tend to shy away from it or fear it, because one of my biggest
Yes.
fears is to fall from grace. Like, I don't want to. I've seen it so many times, and it's one of my biggest fears walking this path, is that of falling
Mm.
from grace, get um forgetting that's that needle.
Yes.
And when I'm it felt like a benediction. I've had maybe 2 or 3 moments of this where there, like, I'm on my knees, I'm weeping, and I'm feeling this, and it's beautiful. It's breaking my heart open to see my beauty, to see my goodness,
Mm.
see my divinity, and to feel it around me. And this is where, I think God really came through and said, this power is shared with a capital S.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not just yours. It's not yours, it's shared. So you can relish in this, but know that it's within everything and everyone. And you can feel safe
Yes.
in that.
I'm just getting a little something like one of the things you fear is to fall from grace, when most likely your sole purpose is to rise in grace, to actually go there, to believe and go there. Whereas my thing is, I'm terrified of leading people astray because I've been led astray. So that's why I'm checking, I'm
Yeah.
constantly checking. Whereas, my city, like the Gene Keys, city and shadow, my city would be to say, you will not lead people astray. Now get on and start leading. But, the shadow is like, oh, I'm going to lead people astray. I'm going to fall from grace.
Mm.
And it's
Mhm.
like this time, COVID, the war, whatever's going to come next. We know 2022 is going to be a rough ride. And it's only April. So we still got plenty to come. So, you got to get on with your ascension into grace.
Mm.
And I got to get on with leading people towards that eye of the needle.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that kind of flip, and I think part of this is, especially as people are tuning into their own spiritual path and the way that they may get to create their life as a reflection of this spirituality, an embodiment of their values. There's that level um, of discernment and trust at the same time, of
Mm,
having that
yes,
discernment, the checking of
yes,
myself, but also the trust that to trust in the divinity that lives within us, the trust in
yes,
that humble power that guides us
yes,
softly and beautifully, and,
yes.
and to take action towards it. I'm so fascinated by masculine and feminine energy, like the high masculine energy and the high feminine energy, where we take intuition into aligned action and move
Mm,
things forward. And the ebbs and flows between the listening and the the listening, the locking in of when something really clicks, and the
mm,
confidence in leading it. And even when I don't necessarily know exactly all the steps, there is an unraveling that comes out from it, so long as I'm
yeah,
aligned with my values. I'd love to hear your perspective on how people can re-architect their lives, because people who are listening are probably going through some form of transformation, some form of space.
yes.
I do feel this earth warrior within me that's rising. I do feel
Mm,
the divine feminine force within me, high masculine force within me that's rising. I want to feel it. I want to tap into it. I want to create beauty from it, and I think that's what people are really seeking. As in the old paradigm, the
mm,
hard work, the success at all costs, the comparison, the lack of authenticity in how we lead our lives, they're all coming to surface, and even the separation
mm,
and fighting. You know,
mm.
what would you say to support people
Well,
who are interested in that?
when you speak like that, which I love the way you speak. You are just, whoa, what a fabulous being. I see hot air balloon. I see a hot air balloon and I see we are so ready to take off.
Mm,
But then we're looking down going, oh, what is it that's keeping me grounded to the floor? And we see sandbags. And perhaps those sandbags are a few more items we need to take care of before we can actually lift off. Items that actually belong in the crumbling patriarchy. So I would say a reconciliation process. So you could sort of, I do a lot of movement, just free movement into the body. What do I need to find? What's in my sandbag? It could be heavy stuff like regret, exile, lost, isolated, jealous, lonely. So a reconciliation process would be, once you get there, once you land in this material, you don't want to be thinking about it too much. Just sort of like in it. Okay, I'm in it. I'm in a place of regret right now. Don't need to know how it got there, who put it there, all of that business. But you could say, hey, can I coexist with this? So not live happily, not like, whoa, this is great, I love regret. Can I just coexist in this place of regret? And if it's a good day, the answer is yes. Second question, can I trust where it actually originated from? Like some sort of sacred origin, not the person in this lifetime, not the circumstances or the situation, but the actual divine one who set in motion the whole thing. Can I trust that? And if it's a good day, yes. And then finally, the sealant, can I have empathy for all involved? The circumstance, the situation, the person, and of course, ourself. That is enough to cut the rope of your sandbag And you just got to do that a few times and then woo, off you go. And that to me, because it's so absent of mind, it's completely not therapy. No one's talking. There is no dialogue. It's all sense and feeling and sensation. And that is the work of the feminine.
Oof, I love that. I felt that. Thank you for sharing. Such a simple and beautiful process.
Yeah, so simple. Yeah.
And what I get from that is what I get from that is very much embracing of humanity. You know,
Mm-hmm.
growing up, there was very much an obsession with not obsession, but focus on if it feels bad, it needs to go. You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yes.
if it's dirty, you need to clean it up. You need to toss it in the trash. It's
Yes.
if it's infected, you need to scrape it off. It's that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, because discomfort is uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to sit with fear, guilt, self-doubt, all these things. But it's in the radical self-acceptance and the divine love that we can permit in the moment that releases judgment of the moment and neutralizes
Yes.
it. And it's in that I've noticed the most transformational times in my life was being able to sit with not the negativity, not in a spiraling way, not in a self-deprecating way or in a story that plays like a broken record, of oh shit,
Mm.
but in a space of like, can I love myself here?
Yes.
Be with myself here, you know?
Yes.
And that is connecting, I feel, to the love of the unconditional universe, you know, and that heals, you know,
Yes.
and what I think it is a reconciliation. And so by loving ourselves there, we can make peace with it. It's so much
Yeah.
easier to release. And I think that's what's so beautiful about humanity and our capacity for compassion that gets to be
Mm.
that frees us, you know.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Compassion is it's most definitely a superpower.
Oh
Makes you a super bionic being.
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much for this really just nourishing conversation. um, it's so beautiful to see someone who doesn't just regurgitate the words,
Mm.
that feels it, digs deep, that tunes into truth,
Mm.
and so I love that perspective that and energy that you bring, and the process that you introduce to individuals around tapping back into the heart, and the eye of the, aligning with that eye of the needle. So beautiful.
Well, what I would love to do is share this reconciliation process.
Mm.
So I have this transmission, it's about an hour long, using the voice as medicine. So a little bit like you, I'm not a singer, but I am a storyteller. So using that beautiful voice to be that steady and sturdy handrail into perhaps finding those places, uncomfortability, regret, and going through that process, the can I coexist? Can I trust? Can I empathize with all of this? So that I think will be very, very, very timely,
Mm.
very ripe for our moment that we're
Mm.
living through right now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So this is your free gift.
Yes.
And so to those who are feeling that hot air balloon symbolism of ready to lift off and ready to snip off the weight, this free gift is available here on this page. And feel free to claim it and experience it. Um, Anaiya, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your energy, your love. How can people get to know more of your work?
Well, just my name, anayasophia.com. That's my website, and you'll see everything there, and you'll see where we live in the French Pyrenees. And my goodness, if you can, come over and stay with us, because then we can really get down to business face to face.
Love that. Love that. And this is a question I ask all of the guests on the series to close off. What does, when we think of and tune into Earth Warrior Rising, what comes to mind for you?
Comes to life for me is you, my blessed one. You are that face, you are that voice, you are that energy.
Mm.
You're quite something. I can't quite put my finger on it. I can't quite wrap a words around it, but you are a way shower, a pioneer. You are the tip of a spearhead.
Mm.
So what I would do, I would just follow you.
Thank you so much for that. Wow, I did not expect that. You got me blushing here. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful for Spirit bringing us together, having this conversation. I'm sure we'll have many, many more.
Yeah.
All my love to you. Uh, Thank you very much for being here.
You too, my angel. You too.
And to everyone watching the series, that's the end of our session. We will see you in the next session. This is Earth Warrior Rising. I'm Lotus Sky, your host, and I'll see you in the next interview. Big love.